Hello and welcome to Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. This is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to learn about today?
Pre-assessment.
Pre-assessments?
Yes.
Do I like pre-assessments?
Well, I love them. But most teachers think it's that thing their principal tells them to do, and then they do it, and then that's kind of it.
It's a chore.
Yes.
It's a chore to get checked off so we can go on to the real learning.
Right.
But why do you like them then?
Well, because it's exciting.
That was weird.
No, it's true. Because I'll get teachers and they'll be like, well, I teach anatomy. They already don't know it. I have to start off at base 1. Aha. But your kids don't know what they don't know.
It's an unknown, as Donald Rumsfeld might say.
Okay, so we took the first chunk of episodes and we have a behavior management plan, and behaviors are managing themselves. But now we need a motivated populace, and nothing spells motivation like a 5 to 10 minute experience where they realize I don't have a clue. And now I need my teacher to help me gain a clue because I'm going to be tested on this in 2 weeks. Or, whatever it is, they need to realize what they do not know.
So even if you're the new Latin teacher and no one's ever taught Latin before, you're like, well, duh, none of them know Latin. Well, guess what though? They don't know exactly how much they don't know Latin until they've tried to do the pre-assessment.
Even if you teach elementary and you think, well, they did the 10s in kindergarten and now my job is to get them to fully understand how to work with and manipulate the concept to 20, the kids need exposure to what you want them to have.
You're turning their unknown unknowns into known unknowns.
Aha, yes. And it's really valuable. It will change the learning experience for the student because they will have purpose, because you are making a memory for them. But it will also help you because now you have a motivated population that wants to learn.
And then, assuming not everyone gets a 0 on the pre-assessment, what other values do you get out of it outside of this known unknown motivation?
So not in this podcast, but in a separate podcast, we'll talk about what to do when magically it turns out the student does know a lot about Latin because their father teaches it, or mother. I guess I should. That's a whole nother conversation when you get that surprise. Step 1, the pre-assessment helps everyone know what is unknown and what needs to be known.
What if they know a little bit and stuff? Do you use that, or is it really just mostly for the motivation of what they don't know?
When you're giving the pre-assessment, I collect data. I observe the students take the pre-assessment. So first off, when I look at teacher pre-assessments, or the schools will have preset pre-assessments that are totally, in my opinion, the reason teachers don't use them is because the assessment is terrible. And they're like, but it assesses what you're trying to teach, but it's too fact-based. You want a pre-assessment. You want to take whether it's a unit of study or whether it's a month of learning, and you want to take that and you want a pre-assessment that focuses on application of that learning.
So multiple choices.
No, that's the opposite.
I was joking.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
When you make that face, it's a joke.
Got it. Right, you don't want to ask a kid what 10 plus 5 is. You want to give them a visual or a problem or a thing that they have to solve where they use the fact that they can take 10 plus 5 to get an answer. Right? If you're teaching science at the secondary level, you want them to construct a lab or deconstruct a lab, or you want it to be as closely related to the act of doing the learning.
Because this lets you get the most bang for your buck on the information, or because it's the most important, or...
Easiest to score.
Okay.
You can essentially score through visual. I can because I'm not giving them a grade. Right? I'm trying to put them into categories. This kid, shockingly, knows exactly what I'm trying to teach. This kid has some sort of idea, and this kid doesn't have a clue. And I can do that.
So the grade doesn't need to be perfect.
You're not grading at all.
You're not getting a 98 instead of a 94.
No. You are putting them into a category. You want that to be something that you can do in 15 seconds or less by just visual inspection.
Why couldn't I just have them fill out bubbles on my multiple choice for like 100 questions?
Because
then,
the kid
and then
doesn't
the score on that we'll put them into my categories of knows it, kind of knows it, doesn't know it.
Well, because, okay, let's be you.
I mean, that's how we do it with all the like standard assessments.
Right. That's a whole nother podcast. But you think you then have something to choose from. The experience of whether I know it or don't know it isn't there. First, I have to create something. You want me to write out how I would actually create this lab so I can show X? I don't know. You know, like you want.
No, you're right. Like I there's a huge mental difference between there's 4 answers there, and I think maybe it's this one, or I have no idea, but I'm just gonna pick one, and like having a blank there and be like, I don't know what to say or how to do. Yeah. It accomplishes that first goal of helping them know what they don't know.
Right.
Much stronger way.
And as a teacher, keep them really short. This should be, at max, a 10-minute experience. For young students, I would say at max a 5-minute experience. And in those 5 minutes, you can almost figure out who is your kid who doesn't have a clue, because you'll have to go to them and say like, it's okay, we're just trying. We're just take a random guess. You're going to have to constantly help them to try, versus the kid who's like working the whole time and wants more time. And it doesn't mean that they're right, but you can visually see it.
All right, that makes sense.
Okay, so you've given the pre-assessment. It's focused on application of the learning, where you can visually assess it. I then would say, let's say you teach 4 main skills in that unit. You teach 4 main concepts. I would make each one of those its own pre-assessment. And I would break up when I give it. I've said limit how long it is, but also limit the skill. Because then it makes it easy for you as a teacher to also sort your data. If you have standard 1 on one piece of paper, I can physically sort that student into a group by moving that piece of paper. And then I have a separate piece of paper, even if it's only a half sheet or a quarter sheet, where it's the same student, but now it's standard 2 or a separate skill. And there again, I'm making my small groups, not because I wrote them down, but because I stapled a bunch of papers together, and then I wrote on the first paper, this is my group 1, this is my group 2, 3.
Wouldn't have to do it that way, but you're saving work for yourself.
Saves tons of work, because my goal as a teacher is I want, while kids are taking a pre-assessment, I know I've written a pre-assessment well, if I can score, sort, staple all the pre-assessments that were done before then, so during the time.
Like the last classes?
The last classes, or if you teach kids all day long, the last one they just took. Yes, it's getting done while the kids are doing an assessment.
All right. Do we have pre-assessments completely figured out now?
No. So once you give the pre-assessment, you then need to, reflect with your students on the pre-assessment.
We've reflected before. I forget exactly what about.
When things didn't go right with behavior.
We tried to do group things, and we reflected on why the group things didn't work, right?
Right.
Now we're reflecting on on
what we thought of the pre-assessment. And then we can set a group goal for where we want to be when we take it as a post-assess. Okay, so I've done this with teachers. The kids, as a general collective, performed at 35% of what they were hoping for on the pre-assessment. They don't know nothing, but they know about 35%, right? And the teacher just kind of takes an overall holistic view. And then the kids set a goal of, well, where do we want to be when we take this as a post-assessment? And let's say they say 80% or 85%, and actually make that a chart that the kids see that this is where we're at and this is where we need to go. You can even set something, a reward, not one that you buy, but one that they get. Maybe they get to choose their seat if they meet this learning goal. Or a lot of times we associate behaviors with rewards, and I think that you're going to get more bang for your buck if we associate learning targets with behavior. Now, if a kid struggles with learning and they're at 5%, well then make it a goal they can achieve. Oh, apparently I'm the one that needs to. Let me mute my phone. Okay. So, you do have to do a little bit of wiggle room when you do goal setting, but because you're not giving it a score, and because it's not going in the grade book, you, the teacher, have a lot of room to use this as inspiration versus accuracy.
They take the pretests with the open-ended questions, and they don't know what to do. So now they feel that they want something.
Well, they feel hopeless. They just spent 5 minutes feeling stupid and hopeless, staring at their pre-assessment that they didn't know how to do.
You created the known unknown. Now you're helping them define a goal to get to the known.
Well, you're harnessing the fruit, right? Like, you just had kids have a very uncomfortable experience.
You didn't like that, did you?
They didn't.
Let me show you the path.
Let me show you the path.
To that not happening again.
Yes.
Here's how far along the path do you want to walk?
Do we want to go?
And then you're getting them to buy into it. This is also very businessy.
Oh, really?
This is like you do like goal planning, mid-year assessments, and then the end assessment is based upon how did everyone meet their goal.
Right. And because it's not grade connected, I mean, that's the real trick. Kids won't care. And you'll know you've done a good job with this if kids never talk about a grade, right? They should not. And so then you can actually, during that reflection, this can be the time where you can bring up habits if they're a concern for that class. Okay, so when we're engaged in learning to help meet our goal, what are some things we're going to do during our learning time? How are we going to work with grouping? They're also, if they're in the group that you spend more time with, they're going to be eager for that time and assistance because now they know that they need it.
Like, it's fine for, a well-ish designed curriculum to be like, well, if they get A's on this and they want to get A's because they want A's, then there's probably no way for them to do that except to more or less learn it. And then they take the test and they get the A's, and that's what they want. That's their goal, is A, right? Like that's an okay way to teach, but it's not as good as their goal being actually learning a thing themselves, rather than saying, I want to get an A in our class. You've established, I want to know how to draw using these techniques. I want to get an A in math class. I want to know how to some math thing that I should
feel
probably
like
know.
As a math person, you should be able to come up with an example of a math thing.
I want to be able to do simple differentiation. This thing that I had zero idea how to do on the pretest before I was exposed to calculus.
Right.
Like if the goal is not to get an A, the goal is to get the learning done that will then also get the A. But it's just a difference in the nature of the motivation that you created with the way that you manage the pre-assessment and the reflection, right?
And the reflection, you might as well not do the pre-assessment if you don't then take the time to do the reflection and harness and give hope. That reflection time is about building hope, right? I mean, because you're going to have some kids whose spirits feel a little crushed after that 3-minute, 7-minute experience, and they want to turn to the salvation, and you have to show them that it's okay. It's okay. Of course we don't know what we're doing. This is day one. No worries. I know how we're going to get from where we are to where we're going to go. And so let's talk about what it looks like to be a learner that does that. And then, I mean, this is a separate podcast itself, but you can actually break that up into smaller learning targets. So next time we come to class, what are we going to do? If you have a class that assigns homework, this is going to help make your homework thing, like, kids are going to be motivated to do homework if they realize that that's a part of if they say, not you don't dictate to them, well, if you do your homework, you'll know what you're doing. But if they come up with as a class, well, if we do our homework, we'll be able to practice, and then we'll know what we didn't learn the class time before because we weren't able to do our homework. And so all of that packaging, that takes more time. You might spend 20 to 25 minutes on the reflection element, and no one's looking at their pretest. Oh, I should say that. Don't hand back the pretest.
Okay.
You've made an emotional experience. Do not hand back the pretest.
They don't need to see it.
You're doing this literally
Yeah,
right after
okay.
they took the You don't even know how they did.
Right. Okay.
They know how they feel. And if you have a group of kids where they raise their hand and they're like, I feel pretty good. Well, then you might dig into the weeds of the pretest. Because A, they might be telling the truth. Or B, they need more exposure to the fact that they don't know what they're doing. 99% of the time, they will be like, oh, that was very scary and now I don't know what to do and how am I ever going to know all of this in time in 2 weeks or whatever the test is. Okay. Next element. You kind of mentioned this with business. You go back to the assessment or reevaluation midterm. You want to do the same thing. The pre-assessment needs to be retaken. It's not necessarily the exact center, but when you start to notice a decline in motivation in your classroom, that means kids think that they know what they're doing and are ready for the assessment. And that's generally the halfway point. That's generally where, like, as you as a teacher, you're like, ooh, we're finally getting somewhere, but they're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kids need to re-experience the pre-assessment. You can use the same one.
So either they're right and they do know it, and
Yes.
that's useful to you to know also.
Right.
Or you can re-engage that motivation of not wanting to feel like you don't know it just by showing, hey, you've walked down the path, but we have not reached the place you said you wanted to be on the path yet. So don't act like you can just sit down and relax, right?
Right. And this is where I do recommend using the pre-assessment as a teaching tool. So let's say they take the pre-assessment. Now they're taking it as we would call that a formative assessment. And this time you can ask students, okay, who thinks that they have a solution that's really viable for this? Who wants to come up and teach and share their solution? And actually turn that over to the students. And then those students that are listening say, I want you, have them have a different color pen or whatever. I want you to add to your answer to make your answer better. And then have another student come up. Okay, we just had that student share. Did anyone have something else that they did or another way that they solved this that is different from what we just first saw? And then they keep adding. And so now you're using it as a growth tool to show them how to get what they might be missing. So that's kind of, and you can feel the class. Again, watch them take the pre-assessment. If they essentially need more time, you're like, 5 minutes is up. And they're like, well, I'm not done yet. That's an excellent sign.
Give it to them.
Give it to them. Give them the time they need. You know, if they're really where you think they are, then that's where you use it as a teaching tool. And when the kids run out of additional solutions or information they should have known, you, the teacher, are providing the additional solutions. And then again, nothing matters unless you go back to reflection. Okay, so we were at 35%. We're trying to get to 88%. Where do we think we're at now? You know, and let them self-evaluate where they think they are, and then let them write new goals. Okay, we have 1 week. What are you, have them write individual goals this time. What are you going to work on? What are you going to focus? What are you going to do in the next week to take yourself to where you want to go and where you want to be?
Also all very businessy.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I find this very exciting. Do you not find this exciting?
Sure.
But this is where you get them, right? This is where you get to be that teacher that you dreamed of inside your head. That teacher that's, you know, like the movies. Because now your classes are full with purpose and excitement and kids who like really care. Like a lot of teachers think like, well, if kids just cared, I could be a great teacher. This is how you hook them.
Dude, yeah, you're creating a reason for them to care.
Yeah. And it's not about grades. If you want to motivate a kid by a grade, it's not going to work.
And it was a thing you thought was a total waste of time.
That you have to do anyway. You have to do anyway. Now, you might be like, Johanna, the assessment you described and the assessment I have to give are not right. Okay, that is something you can work on later.
Well, like, give that assessment and then do these things anyway.
You still have to do that, but this will get you the meat. And then the thing is an administrator wants their building to succeed. And so if you provide an assessment that gets success, it might not change year one, but you will get a change if it's something you can control. Because sometimes counties and states require the pre-assessment stuff. But you will get power.
We should call yours the Successment.
Oh my gosh! Trademark.
Successment. It sounds kind of like a chewing gum, though. We'll work on that. Should we recap?
We should recap.
All right, recap me.
Recap.
It's not just a chore.
It's a extremely important motivational tool for learning.
Because they're going to feel what they don't know.
They're going to feel what they don't know.
You're going to turn their unknown unknowns into known unknowns.
Yep.
Even if it was already known unknown to you, it's not to them. And that's an important way to give them a motivation.
Yes. Describe the steps to dissecting a cat heart.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know,
How am I supposed to know that?
That is gonna cause that anatomy kid to feel something different. As long as you make sure in the same class time you give them the
reflection.
The reflection. Never separate. That's okay. I should include
Part 2.
Part 2.
Always be reflecting.
Always be reflecting immediately after the assessment is given, because you got to harness that, or else there was no point to give it.
Okay.
Next thing is don't forget to go to goal set. Team goal set. Where are we at? Where do we want to go? And that's the reflection, I guess. But what are list out specific steps, actions, concrete things that need to happen that the kids want. Because kids will say things like, I think I'm going to need to work in a small group.
Okay. I
really didn't have any clue what that was.
Right.
Right? Get them to tell you what they need to be learners, because then they'll do it. Then the next step is take the pre-assessment again, midterm, whenever motivation dips.
Yep.
Reflect, but this time incorporate scoring.
Always reflect.
Solution, go over the answers this time. Reset new goals. And then you should be good. Your kids will be successful when it is time to take that post-assessment.
We're not supposed to introduce new concepts while we're summarizing. That's against the debate rules.
I know, I do that every time.
No, I was gonna.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I have one last question.
Okay, ask it.
So, sometimes when you're talking about this, and I'm thinking one way, and sometimes I'm thinking a different way.
Okay.
I think I know the answer.
Okay.
This is not a year-long or semester-long comprehensive pre-test thing. It's like, here is every single thing you're going to learn over the next, entire time in high school that you don't know now. And then we'll do this once, and then we'll do it once again at midterm. And then that'll be it, right? We did it. Or are we breaking this up into more, we're going to do a whole bunch of little pre-assessments that focus on whatever unit of information that we're presenting over the next week or two?
Correct. So it depends on your class, but I would say it's approximately 15 class times worth of knowledge. And the post-test, so we're taught that the pre-test and the post-test have to be the same. If you want to re-give this as a post-test, I think that's great. But if you're a secondary teacher, this is where you probably have a much more comprehensive test that you are giving. You could include this into that test so that you get that data if you want it. But you're still giving your end of unit, whatever assessment you do. That's not this.
Yeah, but I'm saying do you give one big pretest or do you give a bunch of little ones? Bunch of little ones.
Got it. Bunch of little ones.
As you're introducing the thing that needs to be learned over the next 15 days.
15-ish class types.
Okay. That makes sense.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you, Johanna. Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.